like the moment they gave me a hoodie, I was like, it's perfect. Like I'm gonna be able to like put a pad here, over here, elbows, like everything. Like I'm gonna have so much pad. This is a jacket, and they're like, right, but you don't have a shirt on underneath, and it's open. I was like, oh, well, that changes some stuff.
What's up, guys? Today's guest was the co-fight coordinator of Fast and Furious 9 and the fight coordinator of the Netflix hit Extraction. Please welcome to the JAMCast, Mr. Michael Lehr. What's up, man?
How's it going, everybody? Good to be here, brother.
Dude, and I love the tank top choice. What store did you get that at?
I had this custom made for me. It cost $5,000. No, this was like, I remember getting this like one of the first open gyms that I ever went to at Jam, and I was like super stoked because like I remember it back in the White Lotus days and everything, and then seeing it become this huge. Like the first time I saw Jam, it blew my mind. I was like, this is like a stuntman's paradise. Like I loved everything about it, a martial artist paradise, and I was like, I have to get something to fly the colors, and so I'll always make sure to wear it. Like the first workout that I ever go to, most places like hotel gyms or whatever, I'll bring out the Jam tank top and be all like, look where I'm representing, and I'm like, I don't really do any cool stuff, so I don't know if I could represent them, but I'll at least show people that it's out there and that I love it.
Bro, many thanks for the support, man. It's so surreal to me too because I've known you for a long time, and I honestly have known you almost like kind of like predating your stunt career, for lack of a better explanation. Like I think the first time I met you was like a decade ago on Sleeping Dogs, the video game, when we were doing motion capture.
I was going to bring that up too. I was thinking about it last night when we were setting this whole thing up. I was like, yeah, it's very rare that people know me as like they have memories of me not being a stunt person, like if we're in the industry now and everything. And yeah, I remember we met on Sleeping Dogs. I met you and I think Zin Wuku on the same day. And it was like one of the coolest things in the world. It's actually one of the things that sort of started turning me more toward the stunt scene. You know, it was like it planted that seed that like eventually I would move into stunts, because it was working with like you guys that actually made me realize I didn't necessarily want to be around just the acting side of everything. You know, it's just stunts just seemed like people related to me a lot more, and I just had a better time chilling and vibing and stuff. And you know, obviously that's followed me out through today. Like, you know, you go to the gyms and work out with everybody, and we're all just like a big family. It's like, it's crazy because I never really got that from being in the acting side of stuff before.
It's so surreal, man. And I've told this story to like a few of like our close friends and stuff all the time when we were talking about like the success you've had. And obviously, you know, we're going to get into topics about your fight coordinating career, but I tell people all the time, like, dude, like, and this is in no disrespect by any way, it's just so funny to like talk about the evolution of your career. I was like, when I first met Michael, he was an actor on Sleeping Dogs, and we honestly didn't have him do all of the fight scenes. It was like me and Zin, we were like, oh, we got this, dude. You could just chill and sit down. And now I look at you and I'm like, Michael's known for getting brought in to do some of the hardest hits, some of the worst bails.
Oh man, that's beautiful. I'm really flattered by that. I remember one day I had to you asked me to take a video of you just on your phone or something real quick, and I think you did like a scoot cheat gainer, and I was like, what did I just see? Like, it just blew my mind. It was like there in the volume, and I was like freaking out. I'm like, people can just do this stuff like normal. Like, I don't know who these guys are, but they're superhuman to me. It was like the gnarliest thing. That's why, like, when I found out like that y'all were running White Lotus, I was like, I have to go learn secrets from these guys. They're so good.
Oh, it's so dope, man. It's been like absolutely amazing for me to watch the evolution of that from you know, like I said, seeing you as an actor alongside us on a video game to then I remember Vlad started utilizing you in some of the Hunt episodes, which I helped produce back in the days, and then just to see where you're at now is just absolutely insane. It really shows everyone what's possible if you like choose to dedicate your time and put time and effort into a certain craft. You can go from, like I said, being a guy who was an actor and we didn't let do fight scenes to now fight coordinating, you know, the #1 movie on Netflix last year. Like, it's so crazy.
I appreciate it, man. Yeah, it's been a weird journey, and I think I was just talking to Justin Yu yesterday actually about how important that journey is, and I think some people don't realize that, like, you got to savor those moments, you know. It's like I get more nostalgic the more that I've been able to be back around home. I mean, obviously, like, lockdown forces us to not be able to travel as much and everything, so having not been on the road for the most substantial amount of time in the last few years, it's actually made me really fond of like all the old memories that I have. Like in LA, I'll find myself driving past like where, you know, White Lotus used to be, or like even just going down Sherman Way, going past Jam and being like, man, like just when is it going to be there again, you know? But you just remember all the times that you already had there, and especially like the places that we like came from, like thinking about Sleeping Dogs and how that was really just a whole other genre of what I'm used to in the industry. It's like nothing is the same now. It's kind of crazy.
Dude,
but you know, you have to cherish those things when you can.
Bro, 100%. And speaking of like having to cherish those moments and things that we'll always remember, I don't know if I'll cherish this moment, but I will definitely remember it. I would say about 2 weeks ago, you and I had what was, in my opinion, one of the toughest days I've had on set in quite a long time. And I'm not gonna blow up the production. If you guys will be able to figure it out if you know what we're talking about, but we were on a feature film that is being directed by a very well-known coordinator, and we were alongside, like, the call sheet was so amazing, man. We were performing alongside legends like Jeff Amada, Yoshi Azuka, you know, like, it was crazy. Hito Manami was there, even Rich Citrone, like, guys from all genres, and then all the new school guys like Justin Yu, Anish Sherfa was there. Like, it was bananas, bro. But for those that don't know, like, what we're referring to, like, we're not going to ruin the movie and all this stuff, but I will just say this. We showed up thinking we were doing some background fighting, which we did, but they didn't tell us that we were going to be under rain machines for almost 12 hours.
It killed me too, because like rain bars are never warm. They're always cold. You know what I mean? It's just getting piped. But because of the cold, I think it's because of the COVID circulation, you have to like circulate the air. Like those bay doors on the stage were open the whole time. And when the sun went down on the west side, that temperature just dips. And I was like, oh my goodness, like we're all sturdy hypothermia at this point in time. You're sitting there underneath the rainwater. And it reminded me of sort of like the old indie days where you're just out in the middle of the street or something, and it's 2 a.m. and you're like, I'm pretty sure we're going to get arrested for doing this thing. There's no permits, nothing like that. You're just guerrilla filmmaking with your buddies, and you're taking like mad wrecks in this stuff. And it just feels like all signs point to miserable. And then as you get older, all you can think about is how much you miss those things. You know what I mean? I was like, this is a taste of like nostalgia a little bit, like being on this set right now. And I'm with like all the dudes that I remember from like 10 years ago, and guys that I, you know, used to look up to back in the day and look up to now. It's like you said, there's all these legends like standing around you, and you're like, whoa, I feel sort of like a kid again. I feel like I'm new to the industry just for a moment. It was very cool.
Dude, and one of the things that was so surreal to me, which I got to give you thanks for, but it ended up being Misery Loves Company, was we're all dressed in suit coats, guys. So we're in full suit coat attire, jackets, pants, you know, ties and stuff. And the director lines all of us up, all 20 of us up, and he like looks around and he's looking at me and he's like, oh, take your jacket off. And I'm like, oh, damn. I take it off. And then Michael standing next to me, being the good gentleman that he is, he goes, oh, I have full sleeve tattoos, basically trying to sacrifice yourself to take your jacket off. And then the director looks and goes, all right, Travis and Michael, take your jackets off. I'm like, oh, shit, both of us.
I was like, oh man, I tried. I didn't succeed, but I tried. And it was just that mutual look of like, oh, this is going to be the night that both of us are like staring across like, you're cold too, right? I'm cold too. Okay, cool. We're in the same boat together. It's like buckets of like fake blood getting splashed at us. We're like, oh, it's going to be sticky and cold. It's going to be fine. At least we're in it together.
You take for granted how cold it is, like being in rain. I just remember looking over and someone looked at me and was like, man, I'm not going to lie, having a jacket helps. And I was like, fuck you.
Thanks. Thank you for that. I don't disagree with you. You're not wrong. As we scurry to stand in front of the stage lights just to make sure we're like warming up, you see the steam shooting off of us and stuff, because we're just covered in water that's evaporating into the air. We're like, is this our lives? I guess this is what we do now.
Bro, the glorious movie industry. It will go down in my memory as one of the hardest days I've had in a long time.
Which is crazy, because you've been doing this for so long. You've seen like crazy stuff. You've been a part of crazy stuff. And then like, it's just like after, 10, 12 years of doing it, you don't expect that you're going to catch one of those things where they bring you in and you're like, oh man, like I'm like a pure soldier right now. Like I have to sort of like suck it up and get going. It's like, oh no, that's right. I can't complain about this. We never complain about this stuff. I should just do my job. Exactly. But it's painful, right? Like, we're in pain.
I've been coordinating so much the last couple of years that like I'm used to dressing in the outfit that I'm gonna wear all day on set. So whenever I'm in wardrobe, it's like such a weird thing to me. I'm like, what am I doing here?
and not to talk smack about anyone, not to like calling anyone everything. I would say that we've been in the business for a decent amount of time, and we've done our fair share of like eating it and like, you know, being the low rung on the tier, which is totally fine. But then at some point, I remember we looked up and saw like two guys who were, you know, probably like the newest ones on the out of the group. Not that they were like brand spanking new, but they were the fresher guys on the set, and they're like up away from the fire, away from the rain, totally dry, not taking any wrecks. And I'm like, what is going on here? I'm not going to tell them that we should switch, but it's hilarious, right? Like, I'm allowed to be angry at them from down here in the water, right?
Dude, I thought the same thing, and I'm like, oh man, those two bastards up at the top, they're so dry.
Ask him to do a practice fight the Monday after we get done with this thing. It opens with a dual car hit. It's me running both of you over the street.
To be fair, though, one of those kids on the second half of the day, they both fortunately got switched to be in the rain. One of the kids, though, got put on his first ratchet he's ever ridden in his life. And
yeah, it was a gnarly one too.
Dude, it was a fart knocker, bro. There was a couple of takes where me and Kirk were fighting on a balcony, like looking that way. And literally mid-fight with me and Kirk, we saw him hit the pole, and we were like, holy shit. And then I was like, oh, I'm supposed to die now.
Oh, it's crazy. I could hear the impact of that smack on the pillar. Because I had to like be on the opposite side, jumping out of like a thin door, like this balsa thing. It's like the easiest thing in the world. And like out of all of that, like the stuff shattering around me, all the guys punching and kicking and like, you know, swinging swords and screaming, I still hear this loud boom, like against the wall. I was like, that was that gag. Like it always happens right before I hit the ground. And I was like, that sucker is loud. Like, all right, cool. I'm glad I'm over here doing the easy thing now at this point in time. Like, never mind. I can give them their props.
Oh, bro, so surreal. It'll be one of those stories that you and I will fortunately be able to share for the rest of our careers, where you're like, hey, remember that night in the rain? It'll last in my memories for quite some time. So I'm thankful for that, you know.
Hell yeah. Someone told me recently this last year that you never remember the shoots that go perfectly fine. You only remember the ones that are like hellacious, because those are the ones that become stories, you know, for you and your buddies and everything, you know. And it's like, yeah, whenever I think about all the OGs like kind of passing down hilarious stories or crazy things they've seen, I'm like, yeah, it was never like, and everything went fine. It's always something gnarly, and you're like, oh wow, like that's our job, that's our life, you know. And those are the memories that are gonna like highlight, you know, they're gonna dot the whatever memoirs we end up making someday, you know. It's like all these crazy things. Yeah, we were out in the rain. It was amazing. It was awful.
It's like the closest thing to like you know, fraternity hazing, where like you go through some shitstorm and that's why you bond together with the people you're with, is because you went through this chaotic event and then we're able to come through it together, you know.
Yeah, and I think that's like a good thing for like stunts in general, though, you know, is that everyone, not that hazing like in the sense that you have to have someone lording over you and like kind of like kicking you into the dirt, like making you feel like crap, but it's just the idea that like the industry itself and the job that you're doing is gonna essentially kick crap at you no matter what. I mean, it never, people don't walk down flights of stairs in their daily life and they're like, you know what, I think I'm just gonna fall down these today. I don't think I'm gonna like walk down, I'm just gonna fall. It's like, no, your hand railings, everything's like designed to like not have people falling down stairs. And so of course, you know, at some point in your job as a stunt person, if you ever see stairs, it means one of two things. You're either fighting on them and you're probably going to twist an ankle or something stupid, or you're going to fall down them. And that's like the thing that you have to take with you, you know. It's like everyone's going to go through it, everyone's going to have to deal with it, and that's sort of the fun of, you know, like kind of embracing the career path in general, you know. It's one thing you don't see as an actors don't ever have to do that stuff. So as a stunt person, even if you're doubling that guy, it's kind of like a mark of pride, you know what I mean? It's all like, yeah, that thing that you're not supposed to do because of safety stuff, I'm the guy that does the opposite stuff. I'm the guy that falls down those things.
Totally, man. And that is like a perfect segue, man, because obviously I want to jump into a few of the projects that we mentioned at the start of this episode and your involvement in them. And obviously, you know, some of the things that happened over the course of your career. But one of the things that I have wanted to ask you about specifically, and I didn't ask you in person because I wanted to wait for our JAMCast, was related to very much the specific instance you're just talking about in regards to stairs being there for safety. And on Extraction, for those that don't know, I'll put the clip on the screen right now. You did a hardcore stair fall, and from what it looks like you have no back pad on because of the wardrobe that you're in. Can you just talk me through like that and let me know if the stairs were padded or if you just had to full send it on that one?
Yeah, no, it's to the credit of like having I mean, this is what makes like great coordinators, great bosses, you know, it's the people that you want to work for. So Daniel Stevens was stunt coordinator on Extraction, and he absolutely had those stairs neoprened up. The walls on the side, I don't think people noticed, but the wall on one side is like got neoprene. I think maybe both walls. I haven't seen the movie in a while, but or that gag anyhow. They have thin layers of neoprene, and so you buy that sense of safety wherein if you know that it's not going to just kill you or something by like, you know, hitting your neck on like a hard wooden corner or something like that, then it allows you to focus on all the safety aspects or like all the performance aspects that you would normally get to if you had to overemphasize performing for safety, if that makes any sense. It's like if you put a pad down, people can wreck way harder than if you just had them doing it on concrete. And one of the things about that moment is that, you know, they wanted me in this wardrobe where it had they wanted the hoodie open. Like the moment they gave me a hoodie, I was like, this is perfect. Like I'm gonna be able to like put a pad here, over here, elbows, like everything. Like I'm gonna have so much pad. This is a jacket. And they're like, right, but you don't have a shirt on underneath and it's open. I was like, oh, well, that changes some stuff. Okay. And at the time I didn't even know that the stairs had neoprene on them, but I was just all like, yes, it'll be fine. It'll be fine. I'll do it no matter what. It's like as a stuntman, you just say yes, right? And then when I saw the padding on it, I was like, oh, good. That's convenient. But that's one of those instances where the timing of it had to be real specific because Bobby Dazzler's going down with me. He's Hemsworth's double on it, right? So he's launching into me to send us both down the stairs. And if for some reason we get tangled up, something goes gnarly and we're like intertwined, like we could both get hurt way, way more, you know, neoprene or no neoprene, you know, like no amount of high density is going to save you from like getting caught on a guy and like twisting your arm into each other or something nasty, you know, like necks going weird. And it was going to be a spill anyway. You know, Dance even just said that. He's all like, yeah, I mean, it's going to suck. You know, I asked him like, hey, do you have any extra advice for this? Anything specific, like how it's going to go? And he's like, well, it's just going to suck. You know, it's just a double stair fall. There's only so much you can do. And I was like, that's fair. I mean, you're going to accept that every single time that you come to a stunt anyway. But yeah, I think on the third take, because I was trying to like get hit, bail the gun past Bobby, and also get away from him so that way I didn't clip him on the way down so he had enough room to roll down with me. And Dan on the third one was just like, hey, you got to go. You got to give me some air. You just got to go higher. And I was like, copy that. And I remember thinking like, all right, so just bail the gun. And then how would I do this? I would jump really high. Okay, cool. And then you just do it. It's just a part of you that, you know, I was talking to Dan Carter, who, you know, saw Juice double on that film, you know, a wonderful core team member, and it's one of the best stuntmen I know. And he and I had this long discussion about when you get to that point of you've mitigated the risk as much as you can, you know, you're trying to be as smart as humanly possible and take the safety up to as high a degree as is needed. And then at some point, the risk will never be zero. There's always going to be a little bit of danger in it. And as a stunt person, you have to be like, well, that risk on a dual stair fall like that could be that I snap my neck. Like there's always a chance. Okay, jump higher and try to sell out and make it look good. And then don't drop character, you know, bail the gun, do all these other things. I think that's where some people sort of forget what it's like to be, I think not to poop on like, you know, modern day like stunts, but I think like that's something we lack a little bit compared to our older generation where in terms of mitigating risk, they weren't able to mitigate it as much. You think about the days before like Descenders or before neoprene and stuff like that, like guys were probably just really sending it and then just not dying or getting super messed up and like getting up and doing it again the next day, getting painkillers in them and then firing away. Like that's a mental state that we shouldn't lose that mental state. You know, I'm saying we should keep moving towards the idea of like safety and everything, but because that risk is never going to be completely zero, you still have to have that trigger, you know, still be able to like go when they ask you to. And I think some people don't they don't build that into their core foundation of what it's to be a stuntman, like, or stunt performer, I should say, from the ground level. You know, they deal with it when they get there. But I think at the beginning, at the onset, all of us should sort of be like, cool, I know sort of the risks, I'm accepting that chance is always going to be there for danger.
Yeah, 100. I completely agree with you, man. And I think it comes down to a couple different things. Like, I was very fortunate in my own personal instance that I actually went to the ER on one of my first non-union stunt jobs in my entire career. So I quickly realized, like, oh crap, you know, what you see in the end product is just like the cuts that made it, but people get messed up during these takes that you don't see. But I think that it's kind of a little bit different. I feel like a lot of the previous generations of stunt people were either people that had a background in, like, you know, combat martial arts or motocross or some sort of things where, like, you consistently get injured from impact, so to speak. Whereas nowadays, and this is not to discredit or talk down upon them at all, because they're some of the most talented performers in our business, but we have a lot of crossover stunt people now where they were like dancers previously, or, you know, sports where they're not contact-based sports. You know, obviously dance, you can get injured in so many numerous amounts of ways, and the wear and tear on the body is incredible, but you're not always like getting hit, you know? So I think just that is just a little bit different in the mentality of a lot of performers these days.
Yeah, it's actually one of the things that I jump on when I think about a lot of, like, actors will come to me sometimes and ask, you know, like, oh, how do you get into stunts? Like, oh, I know you had you went to theater, you had an acting degree, and then you moved into stunts. Like, how does that work? And I think it might be 50-50, but I feel like at least half of them are thinking, well, I can't if I'm not getting work as an actor, maybe this is an easy way to get work, and then that'll help me get into acting, instead of saying, which is sort of what I did, which is like, no, I'm going to kind of like push this completely aside and then really just focus on this other thing. Because I think there's you know, when you talk about switching hats, it's almost a complete paradigm shift that has to happen. If, you know, someone's an actor and they're used to sort of this certain way of things going, you know, they might be a great fight performer, they might be, you know, like a wonderful martial artist and everything, and then if they've never gone to the point of being like a stunt performer, you know, that's a whole different level of performance that I think they're not necessarily aware of when they're asking those kinds of questions. You know, you can take people who do like live shows, and then you're like, they're definitely like acting for like the 10-15 minutes that they're on the stage, they're playing a character, they're performing, but they're legitimately like riding jet skis and jumping them off stuff. They're getting set on fire. They're doing like high falls. You know, those are legit stunts. And like, I think a lot of people who kind of come to me from just the acting perspective, sometimes they don't understand like how much of stunts is really stunts, I guess, if that makes any sense. Yeah. You know, like, especially like me coming from like an acting background, I was already doing fight scenes, like choreographing, shooting, editing when I was like 16. You know, my buddies back in Ohio can tell you all this and stuff too. We'd be in college and we'd be like running and jumping into walls, shooting stuff in the dance halls and stuff. And no one else was doing that, because why would they? You know, typically if you're an actor, production's not going to make you go out and like fall down a flight of stairs. That's like irresponsible and stupid. You know, it's like they'll hire some dude who looks like you to wear similar clothes, and they'll do it. You know, so I think that's the mental state that, you know, I wanted to be more of, which is like, I'm not going to be the guy that's looking for someone to double me. I'm not even going to be looking to be the guy that can do his own stunts. I want to be the guy that they call because they won't let this other dude do this risky, dangerous thing, you know? And then that's what I think purchases a lot of people, like, the respect, you know, because there's no weaseling out of it. You're like, I want to be the guy in that hot spot, you know, because I trust myself. I trust that I can handle the risk and the danger, you know, and, you know, ultimately it's like you're sort of keeping other people out of danger if you're the qualified performer, you know? So that idea of, you know, like what you're alluding to, that they're used to kind of like the impact, they're not shying away from it, that needs to be built into the core, even if they're coming from something like dance or, you know, or like free running, or from, you know, from something that's not going to involve them like constantly getting like, you know, just like flying knee in the chest or getting slammed into a wall. I don't know. Actually, I think about it, some of those free runners, I get some of the gnarliest bails I've ever seen in my life. So, you know, maybe I'm wrong about that. Every pursuit has its own, at least athletic pursuit has its own, you know, pitfalls and stuff where people can get injured and everything like that. But I don't think you ever walk into it assuming, oh yeah, I'm going to get blasted on this one. You know, if you're like a boxer, you're never going to be like, I want to become the world champion, but it's not like I'm ever going to get punched in the face or something. It's like you're probably going to get concussed several times on that journey. You know, it's like if you're like a dirt, like a motocross racer or something like that, like you're probably banking on at some point you're going to wipe out bad. You know, but you just sort of understand it. And stunts can't be any different, in my opinion. You know, like ideally you never get hurt, but you always have to have that in the back of your head that like that's a real thing, and that's something you're always aware of. That fear, I think, can be very healthy and make you a better performer. You know, it can make you safer in that regard.
Yeah, 100%, man. It's definitely like hazards of the job. They're just pretty much inherent risk. And anytime we step onto a set or sign a contract, you know what could possibly happen to you. So, yeah, it's just a natural part of it. And hopefully, the new generations that come up continue to build in that mental fortitude and stuff, because half of it's physical, half of it's mental. Like we talked about, our day in the rain honestly was probably more mentally challenging than it was physically, besides the coldness. But yeah, it makes a lot of sense, man. And then just on your own personal journey, like you kind of, you know, referenced it that, you know, back when you were in Ohio, you were shooting little, you know, lack of a better term, little scenes where you're crashing into walls and stuff like that. Was your goal always to be an actor since you were young, or did you always have like an inkling to do like action acting, if that makes sense?
Yeah, I actually, it's so funny. Pardon me. I started doing, so I'll kind of do it in a roundabout way, but I didn't start doing martial arts until I was almost 17, like I was 16 and a half years old when I started training, right? Before that, I'd never done like a punch or a kick or anything like that. That wasn't just me watching a TV show or a movie or an old Jackie Chan film and being like, let me try that. You know what I mean? It's like I wasn't actually taking formal classes or anything like that or real training. But the reason I started martial arts is because I'd been pursuing acting, like essentially the craft of it, since I was 12. You know, that's when I saw my buddy back in the day do this like play that I think it was like the first time that I openly like wept in a theater, and it was like, what's going on? Like, I know this is fake. I know this entire thing is super fake. It's like a community theater. That's clearly my buddy on the stage. Like, he's not even ethnically correct for like, you know, in terms of like how they're matching these roles. But the suspension of disbelief was incredible. And like the power that had as far as like storytelling in that moment was beyond what I could comprehend. And I was like, I want to be a part of that. You know, and so he sort of started me down that path of like, well, let's just like act and, you know, read scripts and play scenes together and stuff. And, you know, eventually, like when I went into high school, I joined the drama club, and we were doing that for a while. And over the course of that time, and we're talking like this is like the late 90s, like mid to late 90s and stuff, in the early 2000s, when I was trying to make this pursuit of learning this craft. And just on TV, on film, anywhere you looked in like the media, like Asian men specifically, I only saw them doing one thing, and like, you know, in those places, which was they were jumping around, throwing kicks and flips and stuff like that. And I was like, oh, so if I wanted to be like an actor, you know, like a Robin Show or like a Jet Li or something, it's like, okay, cool. Those guys are all doing like fighting stuff. Like, I did not see Asian males not doing martial arts. So I'm like, oh, that's like a skill set. Just like when you learn like dialect, just when you learn how to like sing and dance, it's like, oh, you got to learn how to be like a fight guy if you're going to be an Asian person. And so that's when it started. Obviously, that's a whole other passion. And like, I love the martial arts like nothing else, you know, and it became its own thing. But originally, yeah, it was just a tool to serve the craft of acting, you know, the thing that I originally had sort of wanted to do, which made turning away from acting later on for purely stunts kind of a surreal decision. I was just talking to my buddy the other day about it, but it's not something I regret, because I still feel like over time my preference for what I wanted out of life, it just sort of shifted, you know. And it's not that I don't love acting, like I don't love the craft. It's like I still do it all the time. I do it on my own time, you know. But as far as what I want in a sense of community, like I found that in stunts, and I was more comfortable being around those people as my peers, you know, for better or worse, just because I felt like I could trust most of the stuff that I was kind of getting, you know, being told, like, you know, interacting with people. If people are around saying that they can do something and you're in an acting circle, people sort of like can, you know, I don't want to say like they can BS their way around it, but there's a lot of like room and leeway that people give each other. Whereas like if you're out at Jam and you're on like the spring floor and like someone's saying that like they can do a bunch of flips, it's like, it's not unexpected to be like, oh, you're a stuntman? Like, let's do some backflips together. And then just, if they can't do it, you just watch them slowly falter away, and you're like, okay, well, you're a liar. I mean, if that's like the case of it, you know, it's just, you're just not being honest now. And I love that fact that you can just hold people to their word for the most part in stunts. Obviously, there's politics everywhere and stuff like that, and half-truths everywhere, but for the most part, high probability. If I said that I could do something in stunts, it was because I felt fine with someone calling me out on it. You know what I mean? I had this discussion about aged a few years back. I think it was like 5 or 6 years ago now, but someone had told me about this whole situation they had where they went out to do a job. The director sort of changed the choreo to something that they had seen in their demo reel and was like, can you do this move instead? And they were like, well, I need to like practice that. I need to get it back in. And he's like, oh, but it's on your reel. And the guy's like, well, I need to work on it though. You need to pay me to stay in town and practice it or something. It was something weird like that where the director was like, oh, so you're saying you can't do it? And then the guy was like, yeah, this director's being unreasonable. I was like, it was in your demo reel.
Yeah.
Like if it's in your demo reel and you can't do it and you're turning that in as your advertisement, that'd be like if McDonald's ran a commercial for a new burger and you showed up and they were like, oh no, we don't have that.
Yeah.
Like, well then why do you have an ad saying that you do? You know, it's like you kind of can't be angry about that. You know, that's right for other people to call you out then and say, hey, look, you know, you should take that off your reel. You know, it's like no problem that you can't do it anymore, but you should probably take it off and stop lying to people. You know, that world is the one that I actually like more valued. You know what I mean? I'm just used to, if you're in a sparring match with someone and they, you know, and you hit somebody hard, it's like, hey, you do it knowing that they're probably going to destroy you. They're going to hit you back really hard. It's like step over that line if you're willing to go there, but you know that everyone else is going to go with you. And, you know, if you're going to say something, anything, it's like you should more or less stick to your guns, you know?
Yeah.
So that's what I loved about Stunts. That's what sort of pulled me away from the acting thing. I got a little too much, at least the people that I was, you know, I kept running into at the time, you know, stunt people were they just seemed way more legit.
That's so funny, man. It's so crazy. You know, we talk about it all the time that like you know, we always joke about it that like, you know, being the stuntman is the least glorious of the two career paths. And so it's always unique for me to see someone like yourself that went from, you know, being an actor and then choosing to, so to speak, step down the totem pole as far as like the call sheet is concerned, and you know, obviously get less star treatment, but obviously it's served your career very, very well. You've had an insanely successful career over the last few years, and it's been great for me to watch and follow you working on jobs from, you know, like saw your crazy falls in, you know, Wolverine. I know you recently worked on Mulan, and then obviously into a couple of the films I want to talk about specifically where you've had your hand in helping with the choreography and the action design as far as the movement is concerned. Has there been a project in your mind that stuck out so far as your favorite? And maybe this will like segue into some more questions I had.
Oh man, it's so tough to choose like a specific favorite. Just in general, I don't know. I'd say like they all have these very special things about them for special reasons. Like I loved Extraction because it was my first time out as the fight coordinator, like the solo fight coordinator. It was a huge challenge, and it was a big test of like, you know, who I was at the time. And you know, something like we just came off this show called Samaritan, you know, with J.J. Perry, Justin Yu, Troy Robinson, and you know, that one had some really great moments where it was like, you know, you're kind of remembering this weird movie magic thing of like, you know, it was like a Sylvester Stallone movie. So you're sort of working with one of your childhood heroes, you know, someone you've watched for ages, since before you knew you wanted to even be in movies and everything. And, you know, we had a lot of really great guys out there, a really great team. And so it was just like a lot of fun. Like a lot of those days were just super fun. Even if things can get stressful and hectic, like, you know, it's projects like that, like where the stress becomes something that you just, it's like you alluded to it earlier, that, you know, you soldiered on through it with your buddies and it makes it worthwhile. You know what I mean? But to be fair, I think some of my favorite stuff, especially lately, has just been like weird pre-visits. It's like previews from back in the day, you know, something like, I had a real ball of a time on this one that we did for Billy Lynn's Long Halftime Walk. Manny Manzanares got me and Von Zell and Brendan Hoare out there for like one day. We were out in this like tunnel, like this graffiti tunnel, like up here in up in like Northridge. And we're just like, Brendan and I just threw down on that one. And I remember it being super grueling, but it was so much fun because it was like that weird bleed over period of like between like kind of indie, just amateur performer, and then like kind of the moving into the professional world where, you know, you're still allowed like a bit of like time to like kind of play and just have fun and joke with your buddies and stuff. And you're not beholden to like a super strict deadline, you know, because you're not like thinking like 2 weeks ahead. It's just, well, we're only here for today and tomorrow. We have this simple, easy thing, you know, but let's go hard at it. Let's try and impress people with how hard we're going to go. You know, a lot of the old indie shoots are like that. There's an old video where I fight Aaron Toney. I think it's from like 2015. And I remember being like super terrified because I was like, this is me stepping way out of my comfort zone to fight someone that I've idolized for a long time. You know, it's like you grew up watching these guys too. And that one, it pulled so much out of me. I remember like at the end of those 2 days, just feeling like I've given everything that I have into this. And the parts where I fail and I don't do so well, it's not because I got lazy. It's because I was incapable. I tried as hard as I could and just couldn't get there. But I'm okay with that. You know, I'm okay with trying and failing as long as I know that I gave it everything. And so much of those indie days were all about that. You're never really cutting corners. You're just going as hard as you can for as long as you can. And then, you know, a week later, Manny or Vlad or Malai or someone like that, they'll put out like an edit of it, and everyone in the Facebook Messenger thread just goes nuts because it's amazing, and you're all stoked that you were part of something brilliant because it reminds you of like, oh crap, we're making movies. That's amazing to me, you know. And I feel like that rang true really, really well when we were doing indie stuff. The Hunt was like that, you know. It felt like you were hanging out with buds and you were always trying to do your best, you know. There was nothing less than that. So I enjoyed those a lot more than probably just about anything, honestly.
It's so funny you say that too, man, because I have so many instances in my mind that stick out like very similarly, where it wasn't like a movie I was on for 11 months or something like that. It's just like these single day shoots or little memories that you flash back on, similar to like your Aaron Tony story. I'll never forget the first previs where I got asked by 8711 to come in and like be the main guy, was fighting against Daniel Stevens for Wolverine. And I'm like, holy shit. I'm at 8711. I'm going to fight Daniel Stevens as Wolverine. And, bro, this is how long ago it was. First of all, I always tell this story to like people that I give workshops to never underestimate the amount of training you should put into it, because I showed up at 87 that morning, like hyped up, ready to rock. And I'm like, are we shooting the previous? And they're like, oh, we got to do circuit training first. Bro, so we lifted weights and we're pushing tires and carrying things for 2.5 hours. And then we started the previs, and I was like, I can't raise my arms. How am I going to do sword? I can't even lift my arms right now. So it was a huge learning curve on that already, bro. And then when I watch it back, I'm like, oh my God, you can tell I can't even lift my arms, which is so funny. But what's even more surreal to me to see, and this is like a great segue into some projects I want to talk to you about, is after I shot the previs, the next day I wasn't available because I was on a job and they had to do pickup shots. So they had a guy come in and just pretend to dress like me and just do all the shots of me like walking and getting inserts. And that kid that was brand new was Justin Yu.
No way. That's amazing. That's so amazing.
Crazy. So crazy. And it was so surreal to me because I was on Justin Yu's first SAG job as well when he was an extra and he hustled the coordinator, and then he got in, which we talked about in his JAMCast. But the reason why I bring Justin up is that obviously his career has skyrocketed as he helps assistant coordinate for JJ Perry. But you've had the opportunity to work within that very specific camp of JJ Perry and Justin Yu and stuff like that. And the one movie that I know that you guys got to work on, which did very well and was highly successful with a bunch of our friends, was Fast and Furious 9. And on that film, was that technically like your first major co-fight coordinating type credit?
Yeah, I'd say that's the biggest one. That came right off the heels of Extraction, where I was like the solo fight coordinator on like a sort of a smaller budget movie, you know, and then the jump into Fast 9 as the co-fight coordinator, it seemed like a staggering leap. Because the budget is just way huge. It's like overseas, and we were in London for like 6 months. It's a massive ensemble cast. There's so many different things that you have to sort of take into account. And the thing that I'll say about this, the reason why, not just the only reason, but like one of the big reasons why Justin Yu, for example, is so far along is because he's really been expected to kind of, go to a higher level. 8711 in general, I'm sure you're aware, a lot of people are aware, the standards are very high. But then if you're working with someone like JJ and he takes you on the road, he's such a good mentor in that way that he'll feed you the things that he knows you can handle if you push yourself a little bit. You know what I mean? He's not gonna set you up for failure. He's not gonna try and put you in a pool where you can't swim, but he will ask you to swim. He'll ask you to, you've got to, put in the work, and you've got to think and be critically smart about these certain things and, develop yourself. But that sort of being like pushed into the fire to a degree, like just easily, but definitely pushed into a fire, I think it forges you into a much better, not just like performer, but like as a coordinator, as we start to transition out of being performers and move more into the coordinating side of things. Because obviously all of our bosses and the OGs, they came from somewhere. They didn't just wake up and say, "Oh, I'm a second unit DGA, unit director or whatever, and stunt coordinator." It's like they came from where we came from, which was just being a stunt person, being that ND guy or the utility stunt person, and now they've risen through the ranks, and so they can pass on a lot of experience if they're really good about it. And so you see a lot of those coordinators taking those guys under their wings and feeding it to them. I know that JJ did that with Justin, and I got it from both of them to a large degree. I got that mentorship from both of those guys. Justin's known me longer than I've known JJ, for example. We worked together back in 2014, going overseas for Brothers. It wasn't until the summer afterwards that I started working on Wick 2. That's where I met JJ. But the amount of time that they will hand you a task that you feel like you're like loaded down with stuff, and they'll feed you this task and be like, "Hey, just think about this, not doesn't have to be done like right now, but you got to get it done by like in the next like day or so or whatever." And just small things like start thinking about this. Hey, you go over to our department, talk to them about this thing. It's stuff that I've seen coordinators never ask their underclassmen basically to do. They'll go and they'll handle a lot of that stuff there on their own. But those guys are really good at making sure that when they give you a task, they know it's something that's going to make you better, so that way you can keep performing it. And they can give you more stuff on top of that, later on. And so, something like Fast 9, where, I was like a co-fight coordinator with Justin. I personally feel like Justin should have been almost like a co-stunt coordinator. I mean, just in terms of, or assistant stunt coordinator, something, because I feel like as a fight coordinator, he was doing so much more work that I'd say at least like 80% of the fight coordinators in the world don't get asked to do, and if they are being asked to do that, they may not necessarily be able to pull it off in such a fashion. So I think that might be like the big takeaway from working with those guys, is that they expect you to step up, in a way that a lot of other productions like would never ask you to do. That's the funny thing about trying to run it from the indie world and trying to transition into the professional world, is that there's a lot of stuff that you just never know, because you're not working on sets in that regard, and you'll never know it until someone tells you, "Hey, hang out with me for like an hour. Let me show you how to do this. Let me show you how to read a beat sheet." You know what I mean? Like, I know people like nowadays that they've been performers for years. They have never seen a beat sheet before, or they've never seen a one-liner. They've never like done a budget and things like that. And I don't poop on them for like not being able to know those things, because like when would they ever find that out? It's like you only get those things from a really good mentor, So in a way, I don't believe in luck, but I do believe in being fortunate. And like me personally, I've been immensely fortunate, just to be able to get where I am and have the mentors that I have. That's something that doesn't come along very often to a lot of people. So, I have to give my thanks to those things.
Yeah, bro, I completely agree with you too. The few coordinators that have been so amazing in allowing me to shadow them and assist them on projects and come up through the ranks. I owe so much of my career to Jeff Amata, who let me be assistant fight coordinator on Fast 7. So I understand how big of a movie and franchise the Fast franchise is, with that many people on a call sheet and that many personalities you have to please, especially when they've been in a franchise for 8 movies, or some of them have been on the franchise forever. They have more say than others. But yeah, like you said, it really comes down to the mentors that are willing to give us those shots, because we wouldn't have learned this stuff without that. And then a lot of the other stuff, like you said, which is you have to just learn it from being there on set and things like that. And it's a great way for me to go into this, which is obviously, even though Fast 9 was after Extraction, I really want to just delve into Extraction for a little bit, because in my personal opinion, it was one of the best movies to come out during its time period in the year that it was released, especially under all the circumstances. And I know it got a lot of eyeballs on it as a result of that. For those who don't know what we're talking about, Extraction was highly successful on Netflix, was up for so many different awards. And in my own personal opinion, one of the best action movies I've seen in the past few years, and major props to the director of it, who was a stunt coordinator himself back in the day, Mr. Hargrave. So how did you get involved on that project, and how long were you working on that, and whereabouts?
Yeah, I remember getting a call. I was working on like Hawaii 5 for just a couple of days, and I got the call, literally thinking, how am I going to like work after this? Like, I don't know what I'm going to do. And Dan Stevens said like, hey, Sam Hargrave's going to direct his first film, and I was like, that's amazing, congratulations, that's so awesome. He's asked me to stunt coordinate. I was like, congratulations, that's amazing. It's like because Dan Stevens, I knew him as like the double for Hugh Jackman on Logan, and I was like, dude, that's crazy, you're going to be such an amazing coordinator. I'd love to work for you someday. And he was all like, how would you like to fight coordinate it? And I was like, I'd love to fight coordinate it. And we talked about it, and then like after we hung up the phone, I was like, did I just agree to that? Like, no, he didn't just ask me to do that, right? Like, that's not within my wheelhouse. I freaked out. I was like, okay, I'm pretty intimidated by that ask, but it is, you either, it's like, he wouldn't ask it if he didn't think that I had a good shot at like fulfilling, on what we were supposed to do. So I was like, okay, just don't let those guys down. You know what I mean? The standard's going to be high because they're really phenomenal. Just don't let them down. And the thing I'm most thankful for is that I'd been to India previously to shoot a film back when we did Brothers in 2014, and so I think culture shock wise, it wasn't as big of a hit. We were definitely not like staying in like a major city. We were kind of in a more rural part of the country, because we basically shot the entire Warner like in this one spot, like this one area, because it really did sort of connect everything together. Like, it was amazing how much of that Warner links directly, for the most part. But yeah, that one was like kind of tricky because I at that time I'm trying to figure out how to just be a good fight coordinator, period. There's a thing where I think people misconstrue sometimes what being a fight coordinator is, and I think obviously there's like a little play, and it can be interpreted different ways. But I think a lot of people just assume that it means you're a fight choreographer, and the truth is like fight choreography is like a part of it, But it's and obviously as you know, it's one of those things where everybody in the room should technically be helping choreograph. Everyone in there's got ideas. Everyone's watched action movies. Everyone there's, knows how to work their body, and, they're going to be able to come up with ideas that like I wouldn't even be able to come up with because I don't know how to do that move. I didn't know that this is something you can do out of that sequence, or et cetera, et cetera. But if you're trying to lead a team of guys that are all badass stunt performers and fight guys, if you're trying to, train these actors and really, make sure that they're doing things exactly how you want them to look on camera, and the vision that the director is, given to you that you're sharing with them. And at the same time, supporting your bosses, making sure that they're getting what they need. I mean, that's a whole other genre of like being in a position on a team that I hadn't really understood as much until probably several years afterwards. It's like I still don't, I'm still figuring all that stuff out. It's like if anything, if I could turn back the time and be like, oh man, there was so much more stuff I wish I had done differently to help out, Dan Stevens and Thayer Harris and Sam Hargrave, parts where I could have done much, much better. But as a whole, like they were also really great mentors in that they were allowing me to sort of make mistakes where it would, where they knew I could, and that they knew that we would be able to find good solutions. They let me make mistakes in the areas where making those mistakes meant that in my solving of those problems, I became stronger and made the project better. They never said things were good or just terrible, like right off the gate. It was like, okay, work on this, try and do on this. Like, hey, I like this thing, but do this instead. And it was always stuff where if I felt like I was getting bogged down by too much work, it was because they were already shouldering like 90% of what was happening, and my little island where I felt like I was super infested with all this other stuff to do, that was my workshop, and it was my chance to get better, And I think some of us, when we get asked to do those positions, because I've had this issue before too, it's like none of us are immune to our own egos, I'll say, and I've had moments where I'm like, sick, like I've got this and I'm always going to be great, and then you'll make a mistake and be like, oh crap, I'm still, I'm fallible like everybody else. I have to fix this problem though, like, because it's no one else's responsibility to fix it. I have to fix this problem. Get off your high horse and make this work, and it's stuff like that. And that's going to be a lifelong evolution. I'm sure it's going to happen forever, like I'm sure like nobody's perfect. Everyone's going to make mistakes, but I was really grateful to have those opportunities to make those mistakes while I was there and not, have it tank my career, not have it lead to someone getting critically injured, stuff like that. There's moments like that where if I ask someone to do something and they get hurt doing it, it's that moment of like, oh God, like, I have to shoulder that, you have to carry that in your heart for a while, and maybe forever, depending on how severe some of those scenes can get. And, that space in which you can become comfortable with yourself in those positions and like accept those things, it's pretty rare. It depends on a lot of the people around you and how they're treating you in that moment. I don't know if this really helps answer any of the questions about Extraction, but the biggest takeaway that I got from that film really wasn't, oh, this looks cool, that looks cool. It was, here's how to be a better leader. Here's how to communicate better. Here's the stuff that I wish I could have done better if I could go back and, turn back time on it. And, but I think those are all invaluable lessons. I think that's what makes someone better no matter what.
100%. It's all part of the learning process,
especially people like us that have been in martial arts forever. You have to have the mentality of always a white belt, because, the times in the day that you stop learning and get too cocky is when you basically have just like, shot yourself in the foot. It's like, the biggest curse in the world is when you think you know everything and you refuse to take on new information and insight. So, and as far as Extraction is concerned, man, like what, is there a scene in your mind that sticks out as your favorite, or maybe even a better question, most challenging to pull off? Personally, my favorite scene was, I love the one, obviously, especially with the car, the way that the car goes in and reverses out. But I also love the apartment scene where like he takes on like 10 to 12 guys or something like that,
Yeah. The crazy thing for me is I actually like the people might disagree with this, but I love the fight where he fights David Harbour in the apartment.
Okay.
Yeah, where he's already injured. Harbour's clearly kind of like drunk, and like his character's drunk, and then they are old buddies. There's a lot of history there and a lot of stuff in there. And I remember we had done a few versions of the previs, and it ended up getting sort of completely rearranged, like in the 11th hour. Like we were choreographing an entirely new fight for that scene. I want to say like maybe 2 days before we started shooting it even. It was something really clutch like that. And I was super frustrated. And I remember I became sort of like a monster there where I was like just in my head and I was like, everything's going to suck. It's terrible. And what ended up being the cool thing was that we had, both of those actors were really open to like listening and just making sure they got it right. Because that fight is full of, it's almost more like a dramatic scene. In the script, I think it just says that he's a spoiler alert for anyone who hasn't seen the movie or anything, but like it says that he's like pointing the gun at him, and then he just gets hit and there's like a bullet. Like he got punched once in the face, pulls the gun while he's threatening him, he gets hit with a gunshot, looks behind him, and the kid shot him, and he's like, oh, that's the end of the scene. It's literally maybe like half a page or so, and it doesn't even say that there's really a fight. There's one punch. And it became this really big thing and kept expanding. And then at its most bloated version, like where we had done a full-fledged, like 2.5 minute fight of it, that got tanked, and we had to recreate a different choreography for like a few days beforehand. Hemsworth was really great at picking it up. He's just like, his mind is, he picks up choreography faster than I do for sure. And they both were so good at just listening to the little details that needed to happen, so that way they could play the moments of like the tension and things like that. There's like a whole round section where they're like, it literally is like a jiu-jitsu chess match. Like I'm not gonna bore people with it, but it's like that everything they're doing is very important. Every little thing they're doing is important. And they would ask questions, why don't I do this? Couldn't I just do this? Why am I doing this very specific thing? Be like, well, this is why. And I'd have to show them like, okay, this is why this doesn't work, this why this has a higher chance of working. And to their credit, they were like, oh, cool. Okay, cool. And after like 2 days of shooting it, you're like, did we really just make that happen? Like, it felt like they never really got a chance to rehearse it. They sort of learned it like almost on the day. And technically there's so many things there to be proud of, because it's like no one else was going to give me that chance to like put that much jiu-jitsu in something. Like I told Sam afterwards, I was like, Sam, thank you, by the way, for letting me put that much technical jiu-jitsu like into a fight scene and make it that kind of dramatic story thing. Like I don't think of any other director that would have let that happen that way. And credit to Sam, because he's like a martial arts guy too. He's more obsessed with martial arts than I am for sure. And was like, yeah, he really respected that stuff. He really likes that idea of it. It's like that's something that he wanted to show off, was like, this kind of cerebral version of it, even if it wasn't we're not having a bunch of crazy wire gags or something exploding with some VFX. It's gonna kind of aid us in making something look cool. It's like this fight is based on the actor's performance, nailing the choreography and making it believable. And I think it works. I don't know if anyone else likes it that much. I know I've talked to some people who are fellow wrestlers or jiu-jitsu guys who are like, I really thought that was cool. I got something out of it. And to me, that's sort of like my own little hidden nod to all those people that I know are out there rolling, grabbing each other by geese, or throwing each other around, getting each other in top position or whatever, and just holding it down. It's that's my homage to all those people, that I trained with and rolled with and whatnot. And I was really thankful that we had a director who let that actually shine. That one holds a special place in my heart. Every fight scene in that thing is crazy, because and some of the stuff I can tell you, the finale scene, we shot a 16.5-minute previs for it. Inside of a week. We shot it in 4 days, and we had to edit it. And I think by the next Wednesday it was due or something like that. And it was crazy. We were in the middle of shooting at the same time, so it was gnarly. And that whole thing is still one of my favorite. We haven't released anything for it yet, but I mean, it was coming in at the last possible second, and the fact that Sam was cool with it, let us basically turn that in. It was I don't know, we sort of made a war schematic for it. We had a telestrator thing where we're drawing on a map of this big bridge, and so then he's over here, and then it cuts to this scene over here, and I think for us, we didn't even understand how that scene was unfolding until, because 3 stories simultaneously in different areas of the bridge and different areas of the city. And then once we were able to put it in timeline and edit it, we were oh, now we kind of get it. We had to sit down and talk about it. And I think a lot of people in the crew were having a similar thing where they're I get what's supposed to be happening, but it's hard to process it visually, just because there's so much different stuff. And having a previs, I think really helped everybody in that regard. And that was the thing where, we were just super grateful for shooting the previs alone was the actual experience. Shooting the bridge was hectic and cool, and it was fun, but the memories that I have of that scene are really more of being out in this field with a bunch of old junk cars lined up with our core team of stunt guys being all right, change into this hat color and then put that bandana on, and just remember, you guys, when you're on that side of the bridge, you're wearing that. And then, but right now we got to actually do a pickup over here. So change back out of that, get into this thing. It was just gnarly. We had 6 guys playing in for 50 or 60 people. It's just ridiculous. We're how it goes. And a lot of people in that position, that have been there are all oh yeah, I've had previous like that. But, those are the cool memories, it's that's our team being I can't believe we pulled that off. It was just ridiculous.
Yeah. Bro, it's so funny. The prep side of things is in my mind where you get the most creative because of the limited resources you have, and like you said, having to use 6 guys to replicate 50. I just had Vlad Rimberg on here. He'll be the episode right before yours, I believe, and he talked about how he had to do the Penny Dreadful finale, which was I think 55 performers, but in the previous they only had 8 people on contract, and. Yeah, you quite often learn a lot about yourself in trying to pull one out of the hat on those, so to speak, So super dope, dog. And like I said, it's I'm very critical of a lot of action movies. I tend to honestly and a lot of my good friends know this, I tend to stray away from watching a lot of action films because it's too hard for me to sit back and watch it from an entertainment perspective, and also I don't want to criticize my friends. So a lot of times I just completely stray away from them, so I have zero opinion about it at all. I haven't seen the new Wonder Woman. I haven't watched any of that. I haven't seen many of the DC films. So yeah, man, it's really cool to get some insight into that. I know you've talked at length about Extraction on some other interviews and podcasts and stuff. So those are just some very specific questions that I had myself. But more as a generalization one because of the unique path that you've had in your career. What advice would you give to some individuals that maybe are in a similar boat as you where, they maybe initially were actors and then decided to maybe pursue stunts? Do you have any advice that you have for someone who is trying to make that transition themselves and what you think they should focus on in order to be as successful as yourself?
Yeah, for sure. I think a lot of it, and we kind of said it before, I think a lot of it is just mindset. You have to switch your hat and really commit to this path. I think if you're trying to do if you're trying to swing and grab hold of one vine to travel a distance and you don't want to let go of this other one, you just end up hanging between the two of them, and it's not that they don't cross over. You're still going to have to, be able to grab and hold on to the vines. This is a terrible analogy. It's already derailing. But like your performance as a stunt performer, it's going to require you to be a good actor anyway. You can tell when like a stunt performer is just a stunt person. They're uncomfortable being in front of a camera, and you're like, yeah, but you're like a stunt person. Like you're going to be on camera a lot more than some of the cast members. Honestly, you're going to be like goon number 3 all the time. We're constantly going to see you, and if that goon is there, like nervously drawing focus or not being part of the scene, it's like your acting is going to be the problem that holds you back as a stunt performer. So like being able to be in that zone as an actor, to a degree, still incredibly important. Like I can't overstate the fact that when I moved away from acting and tried to pursue a career solely in stunts, I never stopped training my acting. Even when we came back like from quarantine, we were in the middle of a hiatus last year. I was like, all right, now's a good chance to go and grab my old scripts, grab my old songbook from like musicals and stuff. Like I'm going to sit down and like devote myself to, I'm going to rehearse each one of these like old monologues or something, or this scene. I'm going to do it like every day. I'm going to do something, I was sitting down in our garage for like, 2-3 hours with like a glass of scotch and just like an old theater book and being like, let me do some table work. Like, let me actually like break this down, like do some scene analysis. I haven't done it in a while. And on the flip side of that, know that acting is still, even being a great actor as a goon or whatever in stunts, is still about 5% of it. It's like the bare minimum. You can have like the 95% of the other stuff, but if you don't have that 5% of being a good performer, like being in the moment, being in the scene, this stuff won't even matter, no matter how good you are. You know what I mean? Like unless you're just in a costume or you're mocapping some random ghoul or something, or a creature. But it's like you still have to have that as a base layer and embrace this other 95% of stuff that you got to do. Just being a good actor. That's I think the main issue that a lot of actors I know coming out of that world trying to go into stunts think that like, oh, I did stage combat, or I did martial arts, blah blah blah, and you're like, that's all not bad. It's hard to understate how pointless most of that ends up becoming, just because it's a whole different vibe. Because you could be like a world champion kickboxer, and then enter into stunts and then still look like you have no idea how to do a fight scene. It's like it's just one of those issues where if you're going to try and pursue stunts, really investigate all the avenues of it and then figure out what kind of performer you're going to be. Not everyone's going to be coming from the acting world, oh, I'm a fight guy. Not everyone's going to come from the acting world and be able to just jump in and be like, yeah, I'm going to pick up a sword and start swinging. I'm going to do flips and stuff. It's like you still have to cover all these other bases of like driving, like learning how to get your M1, like learning how to get on a motorcycle and stuff, learn basic like parkour and things. Just a stunt person is going to encounter so many weird little things they're going to be asked to do. Like, go do some firearms training, just because at some point you're going to have to be the guy who's like holding the gun on set and pointing at someone. You're playing like cop number 2. It's like the sergeant's there and there's like 2 cops in there with him, whatever. They burst in through a door and they're looking like the detectives. I'm just making up a random scene. The detective comes in. He's like 4 on the call sheet. Bursts in the door and he's like doing something. He's had a bunch of people training him how to like use guns tactically and like perform in the scene. And then the 2 stuntmen who come in behind him, like they come in with their guns and one of them is just like awkwardly, like he's way into it, but he's like doing everything wrong. And you're like, who's that guy? Like fire, take that guy off camera like right now. Someone teach him how to hold a gun. And if that's the thing, is that I've been that guy that walks in, has the gun, and just gets shot and falls down, and it's like the nothing ND spot for the day. You still have to not look like you don't know what you're doing. You still have to look like you're pretty competent as like even a thug or a goon or whatever it is. And so that requires a lot of study into what those roles might entail, just physically. I shot like a short film that hasn't been released back in like 2017. I was just sort of waiting to see what happens with it. But we had like a lot of the indie crowd out there, up at Armand and Matt Smith's place. Totally. Or Matt Young, sorry, Matt, I'm saying something. Matt Young. We're out there at like Armand's place shooting this big pool scene. And we had a bunch of like other extras. I brought a bunch of stunt people that I knew would come out and like kind of do favors and stuff. I'd kick them a little bit of money, get them lunch and stuff. And then my buddy, who's the lead in the short, he brought all of his actor friends. And Everyone was great. Everyone was cool for the most part. But I just had an easier time personally dealing with the stunt performers because it's not that they were better thespians or better actors. They were better at playing goons and like people in the background. They were much better at just being background performers because they're always playing the background performers. You know, you're always the dude who's just like standing there, like, you know, looking around at, you know, when your boss is delivering the monologue or something like that. You're like looking at the good guys, like thinking about how much you want to fight them or how fast you get the crafty after this take or how you're holding in your 10-1 or whatever. But you've been in that spot a million times. You're always the dude who's sitting there like mean mugging guys. And so putting you in that role, like, you know, it's like if I have a hotel or if I have like a whole pool party full of those people, I'm going to trust putting the stunt people there more so than just, you know, people with like BFAs, you know, in theater performance and stuff. And it's just because that they know those roles so well. If that involves like, you know, pulling out a gun or just like having the confidence of being like, you know, I'm a guy who's like, I've been in the ring, I've fought a whole bunch, or I just know what it's like to get hit somebody back. They're just going to carry that air around them too, you know, so don't be shy as like an actor trying to get into stunts of being like, okay, there's no faking a bunch of this stuff. Like a lot of this stuff, I just have to know how to do it, you know? I mean, I've heard it go around before that it's the only way to fake being a badass is you got to be a real badass. And I love that phrase because, you know, you'll pick someone out of a lineup in stunt people. You'll see the one that's like, oh, you don't know how to actually hold a gun. Or it's like, oh, you don't know how to actually throw a punch. Or you don't know what it's like to have been hit before, you know? Like, you can kind of call it out. I love it because with, like, guys especially, every guy knows how to sell, like, a groin hit reaction. Why? Because we've all been hit in the groin, and there's no one who's been hit in the groin and been like, boom. I mean, there probably are, but I haven't worked with them in stunts.
Totally.
But they're for the most part, you get hit in the groin, every guy's all like, oh, yeah. Like, and other dudes around him go like, yeah, I know what that's like. It's so terrible. And so if I have like a moment of, you know, you have to choreograph a groin hit, it's like easy. Everyone knows what it's like, you know? But if someone thinks that they can just act their way through a lot of that stuff, that's when it gets into like the problems, you know? That's when you get people who, again, this is why I left that side of the industry, was because a lot of people assumed that they could like just act their way through something instead of like really knowing it. And unfortunately that means, yeah, you got to spend time, jumping on, like pulling out an 8-inch and just falling over a bunch. It's got to take time. You're going to have to go down the stairs once and be like, okay, cool. I know what that's like. So that way the second time it happens, you're not like scared of it and stuff. You'll tell the moment that you put someone in a harness and stick them on a line, if they're like too tense and you're like, just relax. You're just going to you're just going to float the line, man. You just got to ride it. You know, you'll be cool. And like that experience is invaluable. It's invaluable. That's what I would say to like any actors trying to get into like stunts, is that you have to really, really embrace it and then really spend time practicing all those skill sets. Don't lose your ability to perform. That's all fantastic. But you have to tailor that performance to a very specific set of skills that get used on set. You know, they're not asking you to deliver a monologue in that scene if you're going to be a stunt person. It's great if you get like the one line or something like that, and you're trying to, hey, you know, build up a bunch of like co-star roles, and you want to maybe go back to acting after you've done stunts for a while. There's nothing wrong with that. I don't think there's anything bad about that. I think people sell out or anything like that. That's totally fine. You know, you have those skills, exploit them, make them work for you. But don't make the mistake of thinking that like, oh yeah, I'm just gonna dip my toes into the stunt pool and never really dive in. You know, it's like I'm gonna grab hold of this vine, but I'm never gonna let go of this one. It's like you have to make the jump. You know, you have to do it. That's the best thing that I can say, because I think my career of trying to juggle both, it didn't really, for me personally, it's not that as much that it didn't work out, it's that I was very unhappy trying to do both, and I never felt comfortable in either. And the moment I decided I'm gonna let go of this vine so I can really try to swing as far as I can on this one, a lot of things fell into place. I met some of the best friends that I've ever had, you know, people that I respect, you know, people that I really enjoyed getting up every day and like looking forward to like working with them and learning from them. And man, I wouldn't trade that for anything. So
hell yeah. No, I totally agree with you, man. And I like your Vine analogy, having worked on Jungle Book. I know what it's like. You can't hold on to this
one. Speak about like mocap stuff. Oh man, yeah, like that's the thing where you have to be you're a good performer there yourself though, as far as like acting. I remember that back in Sleeping Dogs, like they would have you play like all sorts of stuff. You were always great. It was like super cool. I'm like, what? How are these guys like, they say they're not actors, but they're like better actors than some of the people I know. That's crazy.
It's so funny, man. But a lot of the things that you spoke to are things that I completely agree with and have come across in so many instances myself. You know, performance, being a stunt performer is so much more than just showing up and getting hit. You know, there's so many aspects of it where I see a lot of up and coming stunt people that can improve their performance by almost, letting go and actually taking on more of an acting perspective of looking at things. Like you can either go both ways, where you're an actor and you don't put enough time into the stunt side, or you could be a stunt guy that doesn't put enough time into the acting side, where I see a lot of new people I train who have beautiful lines, and then I have them do practice fights and they're silent and they literally fight like they're mutes. And I'm like, you don't have to key-eye, you don't need to scream every punch, but like, emoting some sort of emotion in the middle of a fight for your life is something that should actually read on camera, and it's something that can't be taught. You have to inherently learn when you're going to yell and when you're going to put emphasis on certain things like that. So I agree with you.
Yeah, you're putting it way more succinctly than I did. I kind of rambled a little bit, but that's absolutely what I think about when I think about training and practice. I always advocate like replicating fights, and like doing your homework, the assignments and stuff like that. Like go and film this scene and then do it like how they do it, just so you understand like what it's like to step into those shoes. I'm not asking you to be a mime, but I'm asking you to like go and embody the challenges that they had when they created this piece of work that that we all like or respect, or that you're going to emulate. I've said it before to a few people, but like I don't believe in practice fights. I believe in practice films, because I think if you're doing if you're going out there with a camera and some buddies and you're going to shoot this sequence, you're choreographing it, you're clearly performing it, several people, you're going to shoot it, and it's not like you're just sticking the camera on sticks and doing a slow motion reference of it. You are cutting it, you're seeing where things stack, you are trying to make sure that like you're in the right wardrobe. You're emulating so many aspects of like a film that at that point I think you're making a film. You're making a little practice film, even if it's got no dialogue and the only communication is just like kneeing somebody in the face repeatedly. That's still a scene, because that scene happens in films. And so I'm like, the more of that film aesthetic that you can emulate, the better off you are. You know what I mean? Look at the things around you and be like, okay, they don't cut as much for John Wick. They really like these things to play out in these long wides for larger sequences. Let's try to do that today and see if we can match that and understand what that's like. Because someday you're going to be goon number 4 that runs in when Keanu Reeves has killed 3 guys. If you're late, if you're early, if you don't sell your reaction, if you don't adjust to whatever he's doing in the moment, because he's got a million things of choreography that he's got to figure out, if you slip on something in the middle of it and don't readjust yourself to make the take work and just finish the shot, then yeah, you won't get called back. You'll be one of the many stunt people that ends up just, yeah, they came out, they had some issues, we got it done, But if you're the person that's all like, oh, I've been here before, I've done this work, and I know exactly what to do, I know how to handle this. It's like preparing for a self-defense scenario. You know what I mean? You're not gonna have like Kato jump out of the refrigerator with a knife and attack you randomly in the middle of your day when you're not aware of it. But that's sort of the only way to emulate what it would be like to get jumped by someone randomly. It's like the only thing to do. So. What's the next best possible thing? Well, you do like a lot of sparring, you're doing a lot of like weird other drills and stuff in the gym, but it's like you're getting as close as you can. I think practice fights are essentially that. That's our shot at trying to recreate what it's like to be on a set, and then know how we're going to operate it within that sphere. So it's if you're going to go out there into the park or into the parking garage or into the graffiti tunnels or whatever with your buddies, and you're going to like shoot it, don't take it lightly. Make that something where you're like, make a story, challenge yourself as much as you can, focus on like, okay, why is this lighting bad? What are the lenses I'm using? And at that point, what you're doing is you're really investing a lot of time and energy into understanding the process of filmmaking, which if you're a stunt person, you're like, that's such a gift to other people who are having to like film you when they're like, oh man, like the camera person he can't move this big Ari Alexa around quick enough. And be like, got it. Where are you going to be for this beat? Okay, I got you covered. It's like, cool, I'm going to stack over here now instead of like, just like over here, because you just know everything. And like, they'll be like, man, anytime you hire Travis to come in, he just nails it like on the first, second take. Everything's like perfect. Like, I don't know how he does it. Like, well, he trained really hard. He worked really hard. He spent time developing and cultivating those skills. So no matter what discipline, that could be for actors coming into stunts, it could be for anyone coming into stunts or anyone new in stunts. It's like, just know that whatever you're doing as far as your skill sets, ultimately it's only as good as it's going to look on the camera in front of the lens. So you got to work on understanding what that process is going to be like. That's the thing that I always get on like new people about too, is just, it's really great that you're practicing in the gym. Have you ever done this in front of a camera? Well, no, I don't have anyone to shoot it. It's all like, you're with your buddy right now. Have him get his phone out. You have a camera. You have a space. Do it. There's almost no excuses for it. You know what I mean? It's like if you were laid up in a hospital bed, like with 2 casts on your arms, and your legs were suddenly like covered in scarabs or something. I'd be like, you take it easy. You don't have to worry about anything right now. There's not much you can do. But for the most part, if you're a person out on a spring floor, punching and kicking at each other, it's like, yeah, you've got all the stuff you need to go practice shooting something right now. Just do it, Yeah. Obviously, we're in this whole lockdown thing, so I can't tell everyone to go out and like shoot stuff with their buddies. But, if you have a roommate, if you can just put a camera on a counter and then just like punch and then like be yourself getting punched, and all of a sudden you're doing like After Effects. It's like, hey, cool. You did one more creative thing than people that just sat around playing video games today,
Yeah, totally. No, I'm so glad that you spoke on that, man. It's been a very common theme across a bunch of JAMCasts where I interview, highly successful people in our field, and they all speak to the same thing, whether it's guys that have always been behind camera like Vlad or Manny, who preach about the importance of shooting practice fights. So what you're saying hopefully will not fall on deaf ears, because it's something that we champion here on the JAMCast, which is, if you're really trying to make a career out of doing this and you want to be in feature films or in television and stuff, the best way to practice, gain experience, and also like gain some notoriety and get people to get excited about you is to go shoot this stuff on your own. If it's good enough, put it out online for people to judge and share. And most times, if it is good enough, it'll start to get your name passed around. And that's how, before long, you go from this guy that's just shooting short films with his friends to being the guy that people are like, oh, we should give him a shot, because I've seen the proof in the pudding. I've seen how he performs on camera. And like you said, it's invaluable experience that you just, can't take for granted and hope that you're going to show up with on set.
Yeah. And it's fun. It's super fun. Like, if you think about it, like we were just saying earlier, like, those are some of my best memories of being a stunt person, were those days when I was coming up and learning things, like with my buddies. It's being down in Chinatown with Vlad and like thinking that we might get kicked off the property. It's like hanging out with, guys like Jimmy Choo, and like, hey, we're going to try this thing out. We build this dolly out of like a skateboard wheel and stuff. I'm like, this is amazing. I mean, that's like when you're going to discover how much you love what you do. And if you suddenly find yourself not enjoying that process and it just becomes a slog and you hate doing, the practice fights, if you hate the training, and if you think it's a pain in the ass and like you don't want to, you're not getting paid to go out there and fall over on the grass and stuff with your buddies while you're shooting something, it's like, maybe you just shouldn't be a stunt person. It's like, that's unfortunately kind of the truth. You should enjoy that stuff. You should have fun doing that stuff. If it were easy, everyone would do it.
Agreed. And at the end of the day, I always tell people, like, it's not rocket science. We're making movies. But with that being said, the one cool thing about our job is that, like, it does live forever, which is like a unique career compared to a lot of other friends that have desk jobs and stuff. Is like, you don't have like a highlight reel of your best tax season as an accountant, but like, we can go turn on Extraction 20 years from now and be like, look at that stair fall. Goddamn.
It's so fun.
I'm going to look at it in like 20 years and be like, I'm pretty sure I could have done that way better.
Oh, it's so good, man. And now this is
stairs. I want to do it for real.
Exactly.
And this is a question that I always end things out with, and it's kind of funny because I was going to ask you if you ever thought you would get back into acting again, but instead of asking that, I'm just going to jump to the question that I always end with, because maybe it'll be a part of it, maybe it won't, and that'll be the answer altogether. Where do you personally see yourself 5 years from now, and then where do you see yourself 10 years from now?
Oh, wow, the 10-year jump. That's awesome. And terrifying. No, I go over this a lot in my head, because I also think that, and might be a stupidly long answer, so feel free to cut me off if it gets too insane sounding. But I feel like there's a constant flux and change in how the industry is moving, no matter what. Like, if you'd have asked me 10 years ago the same question, I probably would have given an answer that wouldn't even be, it's not that it wouldn't have like mattered so much as it would have just been irrelevant by this time, because who would have suspected that we'd be doing things the way we're doing now, where streaming is such a big deal, where like the whole, the face of like contracts is different, like how we're operating within a quarantine obviously is like this very bizarre situation that's happening. For anyone watching this in like the year like 2074, like on their brain iPhones or whatever, like so we had this quarantine thing, this virus happened in 2020 and 2019 that sort of screwed a lot of stuff up, and it's 2021 now and we're still dealing with it. But no, like for me, going from performer, like I love just like charts and graphs and seeing and tracking something, right? But if I see myself going from like actor as like a performer as an actor to like a performer as like an action actor to like a stunt performer, to being like, like a choreographer, like indie filmmaker, to like a assistant fight coordinator, like fight coordinator, co-fight coordinator. It's this kind of upward ramp that goes on this very specific journey that I think eventually leads to being a stunt coordinator, assistant stunt coordinator and stunt coordinator, to second unit director, and eventually potentially like main unit / producing. And so for me, I sort of have this nebulous zone where I think the road looks something like this, and then it just becomes a hazy mess of like tentacles that splatter off in random directions, and I'm not sure where that's going to go. I feel like for me personally, I did know that I was always going to want to do something like this. I flirted with a lot of other ideas of like what do I want to do with my life, but in the end, I feel like getting up every day, interacting with like this community and doing something slightly new, slightly different every single day, it's always changing. And that's one of the things that I love about it, is that, I feel like you're never going to get bored if you're in the industry, like on this side of things. And eventually, if that's the path that it takes, that, you become like this filmmaker where, the thing that I fell in love with way back in the day, not so much the idea of like being an actor, because like I hated getting up on stage, I hated taking bows, I really honestly didn't like having the audience around me to a degree. I like the energy that you get from that, but I was not a person who liked taking a curtain call. I just wanted to leave afterwards, because I'm like, guys, I got what I wanted out of this. I was on stage, I played, I felt something, I was able to like be a part of this world and suspend someone's disbelief. That's what I wanted. I don't need the applause for it, because I really, really was being selfish up there on the stage performing. And I'll take that with me all day long. When I think about moving forward in my career and trying to get something out of it, for me, it's just about being part of it and knowing that like I can help tell these stories in whatever regard that I'm going to be part of. If that eventually ends up being a producer or a director or something, that's awesome, because the thing I fell in love with way back in the day was just telling the story. You know what I mean? That feeling of my friend being on stage in that community theater, and the whole stage being quiet as he's looking into his fake dad's like eyes, and just feeling the weight in the room was incredible. The tears just came out of me, and I was a kid who was like, I'm a man, I don't cry, whatever. I just openly wept in front of this whole crowd of people in a theater, and it was like, that's so much power. The ability to tell stories and suspend each other's disbelief and touch each other emotionally like that is one of the most important things I think we have as human beings. I think it's the thing that bonds a lot of what we do together. If someone's enraged, if someone's like super, super depressed, if someone's like overjoyed, it's like those dynamics of human emotion are what I think are really incredible about who we are, If it was all just down to intellectual stuff, then like I'd fall in love with a robot. But it doesn't matter. Like, there's stuff that you can't explain with those things that are that you just kind of like feel, and that's what I wanted to be a part of. I found that a lot in stunts, but I in terms of filmmaking and storytelling, I feel like as as a director eventually someday, that would be really cool to do that. But if that doesn't happen, I just want to be part of that process in a certain way, you know, like whatever it is. Stunts is like an avenue to that. Yeah. I wasn't enjoying the avenue of being an actor, you know, like in terms of the community. But my goal of being a storyteller, my goal of being someone who was like a part of the filmmaking process didn't change when I transitioned into stunts. It just changed the tool that I was using to accomplish those things. So for me, I'm still getting out of it, you know, now what I got out of it back then, you know, what I've ever gotten it, like being on stage or anything like that. And, you know, I still love like doing acting on my own. I don't think I'll ever stop because it's like a craft. It's like, I still love, you know, martial arts, and like I'll still do like taekwondo and whatnot, even though it's not something that necessarily is something I'm gonna like beat somebody with if they pull a knife on me. You know, I'm gonna like jump roundhouse kick a guy in the head for holding me at gunpoint or something. Be like, take my wallet and this black belt, I don't need it, you know. But will I go out and still kick and then train and do my old, like, you know, like Poomsae stuff all the time? Like, absolutely, because it's just a part of what I love about martial arts. Same way that I just love the craft of acting. I love that ability to like disappear and sort of, you know, play within those boundaries of human emotion and still feel safe about it, you know, while taking these big risks, you know. And then what I love about being part of the machine of filmmaking, even if it's just being the guy that falls downstairs, or if it's the guy that's, you know, telling an actor how to do something, or if it's the guy saying, you know, like, cut, like that's a wrap, we're going home, any of that stuff, it's, to me, that's all very impressive still. It's all super cool. And it's never going to go away. So in the next 5 to 10 years, I honestly don't know what I'll be doing. I know that I'll be happy surrounded by the right community. I know I'll be happy being part of that process of storytelling. And that's the worst answer ever because it was long and I didn't have a solution. But who knows? In 10 years, when I ask you to do like, when I'm like, hey, can you come do this web series for me that I've been writing the script for? Feel free to be like, no, but I support you anyway.
Hell yeah, Doug. Oh no, I still take that as an answer, bro. It was a very well thought out answer. I've had both sides of the spectrum on here where some guys are like, oh, I don't know, that's too hard of an answer, I'm not going to answer that. to you at least elaborating upon like what you're thinking about. So no. And more than anything, man, I think I always ask that question because it's something that I look forward to, where in the future, hopefully, you know, I'll have you back on here. We can talk about what's happened in the time since you've been on the first time and things like that. But more than anything, man, like, you know, I appreciate the times that we've shared, whether it's been in the rain to, you know, a decade ago working on motion capture together. And I'm just glad that I was here to be a small part of the journey and get to witness what's been happening with your career, man. So I appreciate you taking the time to share it with us.
Oh yeah, dude. I'll tell this real quick that on Sleeping Dogs, I don't know if you remember it. I remember a day when it was like you, me, pretty sure it's us two, Zin and Michelle Lee were mocapping general action for Sleeping Dogs, and we're like NPCs. And there's like a moment when we had to like, there was constantly explosions happening just because like you just had to deal with, okay, at any point in time an explosion could happen because the character could shoot a rocket launcher into this. And so you're like checking cell phones and then exploding from that. And you're like typing on a computer at the library, then like exploding from that. And one time we had to do one where the four of us were sitting in bathroom stalls. So we're like on toilets. Yes. And an explosion happens. And I remember at some point we were pantomiming, even like after the T-pose, you're like pantomiming, like opening the door and like sitting down, like taking stuff off and like sitting there and then waiting for the explosion. And all of us were just giggling under our breath, like, here it comes. Like, thank goodness they're not doing face capture because you'd see us all dying. And like, as much of an old memory that is, I think that totally defines most of what I love about stunts, is that and on any given day you can be in spandex, covered in balls, getting paid good money to mime sitting on a toilet while being detonated from a rocket launcher.
Oh my god, yo, from toilet mocap to fighting in the rain alongside each other covered in blood, man. It's been an interesting few years to say the least, and hopefully many more memories to come, man. Many more.
Man, if we're motion capturing toilet explosions in 10 years, I might just have to walk away from the industry. It'll be 1 too eerie and 2 perfect.
Dude, if I come across a script that has any explosion on a toilet, you're getting the damn call at this point. So
I better.
Me,
it's like I'm probably the only one who's like still willing to do that kind of gag too. I think everyone else just like moved on to more interesting stuff. I'll be like, I'll totally do it. Did you need me with pants on or off? It's fine. Like, Travis, where did you get this guy?
Oh, bro, I will look forward to that day very greatly, man. I can't even wait, man. So before we get out of here though, can you just let people know where they can continue to follow you or stay up to date with your journey, whether that's social media or anything you want to direct them to?
Yeah, for sure. Appreciate it. You can always find me on my Instagram at Art of Legitsu. It's ARTOFLEGITSU. I hope I just spelled that right. If not, then I apologize to everybody who's going to spend time looking for it. But I'm sure if you just look up my name on any of those places, it'll come up. Just Michael Lehr. You hit me up on Facebook Messenger or whatever. Like I would normally give out my email, but lately I've been getting a lot of weird political spam mail. So a lot of stuff just gets sent to junk. So maybe just the best way to catch me is to follow me on IG, and then we can chat there.
Hell yeah. And we'll be sure to put it on the screen and spell it correctly. So no worries. I got you.
Thank goodness. Appreciate it.
Hell yeah. So guys, with that being said, please be sure to hit that like button, comment, subscribe for brand new episodes each and every week. Join us every Monday for Jam Breakdowns and every Friday for brand new JAMCast, interviewing influential members of the movement community like Mr. Michael Lehr himself. So with that being said, guys, I got to give one more very special shout out and thank you. Thanks for coming through, homie. I appreciate your time.
Oh, thank you, brother. Much appreciated.
Hell yes. And as always, guys, coming through, I'm your host, Travis Wong. Thanks for joining us here on another JAMCast. Until next time, we'll see you all soon. Peace.